Hello everyone, my name is Denise and today I'll be talking about this book, The Drama of the Gifted Child by Alice Miller. Yes, this is the second part of the review and today I'll be talking more about narcissism. So what she believes, Alice Miller believes, is that when we were young as young children, if we had some unmet needs or maybe even traumatized, and our parents actually gave a lot of conditional strokes, which means that they praised us a lot for performing well at our studies, on our sports, just very conditional kind of strokes, then it can result in a combination of both depression, you're grieving for your unmet needs for your childhood, and also grandiosity. So these two in combination gives rise to narcissism or maybe even narcissistic personality disorder. So in the counseling room, it is quite common to observe the client, she might come in and start talking about her sadness, her depression. But after a while, maybe a couple of minutes talking about that, she might suddenly switch modes and start talking about her own grandiosity, how well she's doing at school or at work or in her intellectual pursuits, her relationships. So that is obviously, when I observe it, is obviously a defense mechanism, because facing her own true self in its weaknesses, in all its ugly emotions like envy, weakness and vulnerability is just too painful. So the defense, which is grandiosity, pops in to mask this. Okay, when I observe it in the room, I might reflect it back to the client and let her know that it is a form of grandiosity, it's a kind of protection. But it cannot be like one full hour just talking about her triumphs, then next 5 sessions talking about her triumphs, because if this keeps going on, then no real inner work is done. It's like she doesn't really feel free to have this unbridled expression of her true inner feelings, which is actually what I'm wanting to create, a very safe space for her to express that all. Okay, so next, it is also very important, according to Alice Miller, it's very important for therapists themselves to explore their own darkness, their own shadow side, which is to walk into the dark forest of our own unmet needs in our childhood and see ourselves for who we truly are, not just the beautiful front, but all that ugliness, the envious, jealous, angry, enraged child within us, and to be okay with that, and to be okay with that. We just have to keep foraging into that dark forest until we get comfortable with that. One thing that I often hear counselors saying, and even life coaches, is like, no, I'm never going to go to dark places. It's almost as if they're very afraid of it. I'm going to leave it to the psychologist or the psychiatrist to do that. I'm not going to that dark place. I'm not trained for that. I'm too scared of it. Actually, it's not that they're not trained per se. My sense is that they're too afraid to go into their own darkness and to see themselves for who they really are, and to realize that it's okay, and to love themselves for their true self as well. Right? Because if they go frequently, like every single day, every few days, they face themselves, their real, true, ugly self, and it's okay with that. I'm not perfect, but that's okay. And just allow themselves to feel whatever they feel. Then when it comes to them holding the hands of their clients and bring them into their own dark forests, they won't be scared anymore, because it's no longer uncharted territory. And in fact, you'll find it quite healing for both the therapist and the client. And clients sometimes can be even braver than the therapist. So the therapist might try to intellectualize, throw some fancy words around and fancy counseling scaffolds around. But that is not good. In fact, it is okay. If the client wants to go into dark place, have courage and lead them there. Okay, so Alice, in her page 59, she shared that if you try to intellectualize and throw scaffolds instead of holding the hand and bring them in, it would be like this. He is in danger of behaving like a friend who brings a good meal to a prisoner in his cell at the precise moment when the prisoner has the chance to escape, perhaps to spend his first night hungry and without shelter, but in freedom nonetheless. Since this first step into unknown territory would require a great deal of courage, the prisoner may comfort himself with his food and shelter and thus miss his chance and stay in prison. That's exactly it. It is important to clear the path and be brave and really walk with them to that dark forest which is possibly their childhood where they had some trauma or unmet needs, and just meet that. And whenever the grandiose front comes out, recognize it immediately as a defense. It's very normal, especially for someone as agreeable as me, to just sit there and say, well done, I'm happy for you, I'm so proud of you. But then if I do that, I'm just echoing what his parents did, which is give him a lot of conditional strokes for the things that he done well. It's very conditional, you see. And I think a wise person once said that nobody can be truly loved if it's conditional. Love it has to be unconditional. So when he or she expresses rage or anger, or even go vulgarities and be very angry and be very authentic, that is when if I can stroke them positively and give them praise for that, that is when they can truly feel loved and respected and become whole and full again. Okay, I want to close with this, which is the story of the legend of Narcissus. The legend of Narcissus actually tells us the tragedy of the loss of the self. Narcissus sees his reflection in the water and falls in love with his own beautiful face, of which his mother was surely proud. The nymph, Echo, answers the young man's calls because she is in love with his beauty. Echo's answering calls deceive Narcissus. His reflection deceives him as well, since it only shows his perfect, wonderful face and not his inner world, his pain and his history. His back view, for instance, and his shadow remain hidden from him. They do not belong to and are cut off from his beloved reflection. So forward. In trying to be one with his beautiful picture, he gave up his true self to death, or in Ovid's version, to become changed into a flower. This death is the logical consequence of the fixation on the false self. So yes, this is narcissism, and it's the tragedy of narcissism. They create a persona and they convince themselves they're nothing but a persona, and as a result they get cut off from their own emotional world. They lose the emotional acumen and their antennas are not so good anymore, and everything is a feigned kind of expression. So they have to put everything through a filter of the persona, you see. So they're not able to be spontaneous. Everything's like, okay, for instance, if I'm wearing a persona, I'll be like, what would this wonderful Denise do in this situation? She's so smart and intellectual and so pure and innocent. What would a pure, innocent, intellectual person do? So I'm putting everything through that filter, it prevents spontaneity, and the inner true self is being denied. So another quote, I don't have it exactly, but I remember it in my head. It's like narcissistic people are like as if they're walking on stilts all the time, high and mighty, grandiose, not grounded. And yet at the same time, they're always envious of those who can walk on the ground on their bare feet and allowed to be average. So that is really, really encapsulates narcissism, and it's not so nice lah. Because for a time, I can understand that fully, because for a time when I was much younger, in my 20s, I had a lot of narcissistic traits. It took a long time for me to shake it off, because and to realize that the authentic self is actually the more attractive self. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this review, and stay tuned for more reviews on this book. If you like this video, kindly press subscribe, share, and like. Thank you so much, and God bless.